Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me. Well, I am on the sort of DIY version again. I really like taking the dies I have and, figuring it out to make something that I like the look of. Now, I have seen lots of different bouquet style dies. Now, I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second, but first of all, I was going through my stash to try and find some small, dainty little flowers that I could use, and the first one I saw was this Elizabeth Craft Designs. This is the Wildflower one, and there is a little plate in there that has 3 little dies on it. Then I also had this Simon Says stamp Swing Blossoms, and this has lots of little blossoms, I guess, flowers that might also work as well. Now, instead of me having to ink up everything and go from scratch on white cardstock, I have the Ombre paper pad here, and I really like this more than I thought I would. This has 40 double-sided sheets in it. It's a 6x6 paper pad, obviously. It is 180 GSM, just in case you were interested, but this has some really sort of great ready-made paper, and I know that we can make this all ourselves, absolutely, but I purchased this one because it inspired a couple of projects of mine, and so as per usual, there's always going to be leftovers and, more sheets to use up. So this was a good purchase for me. It has inspired me, but it also is enabling me to cut a few, corners rather than having to ink them all up. So I thought that I would use the nice variation in the color here as a base for some of my flowers. So I was trying to get something that was either like pinky orange or yellowy pink, some of those kinds of colors that would be for the flowers. And then I wanted some greens, and I didn't want it to be just one flat green. I wanted a few different greens, and that would be the stems. So I'm going to use both parts of this. I'm going to use, of this die, I want the actual, like the base part of the die, which is basically the leaves and the sort of stems of the flowers, but then I also want the gorgeous little flowers that it creates as well. So I'll cut out a couple of little pieces of each, and then we can go from there. Now, I just like the look. You can see, like, on those green pieces, there's different colors all mixed in. Now, that is something that I could make using some inks for sure, but it was really fun just to be able to cut them out of this thing. I wasn't sure how I would go with this Ombre paper pad, but yeah, so far, great purchase. Now, I also want to make the wrapper that the bouquet is going to be in, and this is easier than you think. As always, we're trying to add as much interest into this as we can. So I have a couple of different embossing folder options. That Simon Says stamp one that I just put down is the basket weave, I think it is. But then I also have this one from Sizzix, and this one is called Woven, and this is the one that I've chosen to use. It is a very sort of, just a slight pattern that it puts on there, just a little bit of texture. Even, I think this one called Linen, I think would be really good, just like a little bit of something happening in the background. Now, actually, to make this, all we need is a little square, and I wasn't sure how big of a square I would need to begin with. This is more of a trial and error thing, depending on the size cards that you make, whether you make the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, whether you make the 5 by 7, whether you make, slim lines, it'll just depend. Now, to bring out a little bit more of that texture, I am just adding the very last remnants of some ink. This happens to be the Vintage Photo, just a tiny, tiny bit. Now, you could also run over like a little bit of embossing powder over top of this, embossing ink. That would also give some nice texture and emboss some of it, but this is how simple this gorgeous bouquet. I'm literally going to turn it so it looks like a diamond shape, the square, and then fold in both the corners. I want there to be a little bit of room down the bottom. I want some stems to poke out down the bottom, but I also want a gorgeous bunch of, bouquet, I guess, of flowers to pop out the top. And I had seen some gorgeous dies that do this, and I absolutely could have purchased them, but I just knew there was a way that surely I could make it using what I had already. Now, I have a Postage stamp die that I have cut out of some plain white cardstock as well, and the white on white looks good. It is very white on white, so I think while I have this ombre pad out, I'm going to take actually the same sheet, and I'm just going to cut out a plain square This is just going to add a splash of colour and define those couple of layers a little bit more. I'm using my Spellbinders Guillotine trimmer. I absolutely love this. I have changed over a few months ago from the previous one that I used, and I definitely find this one easier. I find it a bit more stable. I find that the guillotine arm shuts smoothly, a bit more smooth, and yeah, I just like this one a little bit more, that's for sure. And so this has become my go-to trimmer. I love the idea of not having to replace blades. Now I absolutely will keep my other Dress My Craft one because it has the score blade as well, and sometimes that is just really, really handy to just cut and score quickly. So I will keep it, but I seem to have been reaching for this Spellbinders one, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. So a little bit of that foliage. Now this is where you just sort of cut and trim. If you think it's got a little too much foliage, it's a little thick, or there's too many stems, then cut them off. It's okay. We get to pick and choose how we want these to be. And again, you know, we're changing the shape and probably the original use of this die, and just make it into this little bouquet. So I'm sort of fitting everything, seeing how it's all going to fit in this little rectangle that I've got. I'm going to pop the back of this down, and I do want those front, the two flaps that are crossing over, I don't want them to stick super flat, so I'm going to work on that in a minute. But while I'm placing out all these flowers, I want those to be able to be opened and maneuverable so that I can place everything really well, you know. I also want to be able to make sure that there are some stems coming out the bottom of the bouquet, and that means it just looks a little more realistic and not quite as empty down the bottom there. So I kind of wait to the end and I find a few little scraps that I can add down the bottom. Nobody's going to know that they were just the scraps. I take a few of those flowers, I end up doubling up some of them just so that they look a little bit more full, and so I place a couple on top of the other, usually a big and a small, a couple of different types of flowers because they came from two different dies, so that always looks good. And I just, you know, fill the gaps, I guess, make sure that there is a nice balanced amount of flowers. As I said, I'm going to add that greenery down the bottom. I can open up the bouquet to see, make sure I can place them properly where they, you know, where those bottom stems need to be, and make sure that there's no gaps. I don't want people to be able to see that they're not continuous. They're just going to think that they are continuous. So with a little bit of fluffing, I make sure that the top is all full. The bottom has just a handful of stems coming out. It doesn't have to be, you know, absolutely perfect, but just a little few out the bottom to look there. And then, as I said, I want there to be like a little bit of dimension. I don't want those flaps across the front, the part of the bouquet, to close absolutely flat. So I'm actually going to pop a few little foam squares in here to make sure that they stay in place. And then I take off the tops of these. These are the 1mm ones, and then I add another one on top, as I said, so that it's got some good dimension there and it's a nice full bouquet of flowers. Now, as I said, there are dies out there that do this, absolutely, and I'm sure that they are actually really good and really handy, but it is fun to know that actually we can make this, because this was just a square piece of paper. And hopefully, if you are watching this video, then you can have a look at this and think, yeah, actually, I can do that too. That's something I can do. That's within my realm of possibilities. So give it a go. Let me know what you end up with. I would love to see pictures of it. And the best way to do that is over on our Facebook group. It's called Come Crafting with Natasha. As always, we have an amazing group of people who are all like-minded, who all enjoy paper crafting there, so it's a really fun and inspiring place to browse through, even if you don't want to post. If you're a bit of a lurker like I am in some groups, it's just nice to see what other people are coming up with. And if you would like more Natasha content, then head over to natashafootecreative.com. I have a whole website of exclusive content that won't be here on YouTube. And there is a whole lot of card making classes over there. There is a whole series that I'm doing for the year, a year-long series. Lots of fun things over there. Now, I used a quick sticker from the Simple Stories sticker book, and I have actually cut this up, a little beautiful saying, and I'm going to just go around it with a little fine line black marker. This helps each individual word sort of pop off the page a little bit more just because they are a similar colour to the background. It says, find the beauty in life. And I really like that to go with this gorgeous bouquet of flowers. I'm just adding a few extra little details there onto the bouquet, but just little bits and pieces. I could keep going forever. Now, the centre of these flowers did look a little bit bare. So whilst I was putting this together, I thought it's missing a little bit of something, right? So we're going to work on that. I pop this down onto that panel I cut down, and you can just see it makes all the difference, and it also brings in the colours of the flowers to another element, another aspect of the card. So I pop this down onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and then, as I said, I'm going to bring in something just for the centre of the flowers, and I knew I was missing that shiny aspect from this card, so I've got some gorgeous little gems that are going to stick in the centre of these flowers. You could use Nuvo drops or sequins or anything you've got to go in the centre, but that is this gorgeous bouquet finished for today. I hope you enjoyed this card. Let me know if you end up making one using this technique, and I'll see you in the next video.